if I told you about a president who was a real-life superhero? A man who could write in Latin with one hand and ancient Greek with the other at the same time. A man who rose from a log cabin to become one of the most brilliant minds ever to lead the United States, only to have it all tragically cut short. This isn't a myth. It's the incredible and heartbreaking story of James A. Garfield, the 20th President of the United States. His story starts in a place about as humble as it gets, a tiny log cabin in the backwoods of Ohio. Born in 1831, Garfield, your ass world, was turned upside down when his father died when he was just 2 years old. His mother, Eliza, was left to raise 4 children alone in crushing poverty. Life was a constant struggle for survival. They had nothing, but young James had a secret weapon, an insatiable hunger for knowledge. While other boys were working the fields, Garfield was devouring every book he could get his hands on. He was a sponge, soaking up information at a stunning rate. He worked odd jobs, on canal boats and as a carpenter, anything to earn a few cents to buy more books. People started to notice this wasn't just a smart kid, he was a prodigy. He taught himself multiple languages, not just for fun, but because he wanted to understand the world on a deeper level. His raw intellect took him to college, a rare feat for someone from his background, and he didn't just attend, he excelled. He was so brilliant that after graduating, he returned to his alma mater, the Eclectic Institute, as a professor. And by the age of just 26, they made him the president of the entire college. Imagine that. His students adored him. He wasn't some stuffy academic. He was dynamic, engaging, and he made learning feel like an adventure. It was during this time that his famous party trick emerged, writing a sentence in Latin with his right hand while simultaneously writing the same sentence in Greek with his left. It wasn't just for show, it was a demonstration of the sheer power of his mind. But the quiet life of an academic wasn't destined to last. The nation was tearing itself apart. The Civil War erupted, and Garfield, a man who hated violence but loved the Union, knew he couldn't stand on the sidelines. He joined the Union Army, not as some high-ranking officer, but as a lieutenant colonel of a volunteer regiment. His brilliance wasn't just academic, it was strategic. He quickly proved himself on the battlefield. At the Battle of Middle Creek in Kentucky, he led a smaller, outnumbered force to a decisive victory, a much-needed morale boost for the Union early in the war. His bravery and tactical genius were undeniable. He was promoted again and again, eventually rising to the rank of Major General, one of the youngest to ever hold that position. His men respected him not just for his intellect, but for his courage and his unwavering moral compass. But even as he was succeeding in the military, another call was coming. The people of his district in Ohio saw his leadership and elected him to Congress in 1862. Abraham Lincoln himself persuaded Garfield to accept the seat, telling him that men of his caliber were more valuable in Washington than on the battlefield. So Garfield resigned his commission and entered the political arena. For the next 18 years, he served in the House of Representatives, and he wasn't just a bench warmer. He became one of the most powerful and respected voices in Washington. He was a champion of civil rights for newly freed African Americans, arguing passionately for their right to vote. He was a staunch enemy of corruption, fighting against the political machines and graft that were rampant in what we now call the Gilded Age. He was a gifted orator, and his speeches, filled with logic and passion, could sway the entire chamber. He built a reputation as a man of integrity, a rare thing in the politics of his day. And that brings us to the Republican National Convention of 1880. This is where the story takes a wild turn. Garfield went to that convention with absolutely no intention of running for president. He wasn't a candidate. He was there to support his friend, John Sherman, for the nomination. But the convention was deadlocked. The two main factions, the stalwarts and the half-breeds, were in a bitter fight, unable to agree on a candidate. Ballot after ballot, no one could get a majority. The convention was stuck. Then, on the 34th ballot, something strange happened. A single delegate from Wisconsin cast a vote for James A. Garfield. Garfield immediately stood up and protested, saying he was not a candidate and could not be nominated. But the idea had been planted. On the next ballot, more delegates switched their votes to him. It was a snowball effect. The deadlocked convention saw a path forward, a compromise candidate that everyone respected. Against his own wishes, the delegates swarmed to him. On the 36th ballot, James A. Garfield, the man who came to nominate someone else, became the Republican Party's nominee for President of the United States. It was a true political shocker. He won the election later that year, and the boy from the log cabin was headed to the White House. As president, Garfield had a bold vision for America. He wanted to clean up the government once and for all, dismantling the corrupt spoils system, where jobs were handed out as political favors. He planned to invest in education, believing it was the key to a stronger nation. He was determined to continue his fight for civil rights and build a government based on merit, not connections. He was ready to modernize the country and lead it into a new era, but he would never get the chance. On the morning of July 2nd, 1881, just 4 months into his presidency, Garfield walked into a Washington, D.C. train station. He was on his way to a family vacation, looking forward to a brief rest. As he walked through the waiting room, a man stepped out from the crowd, drew a pistol, and fired 2 shots. One grazed Garfield's arm, the other lodged deep in his back. The shooter was Charles Guiteau, a disgruntled and delusional man who believed he was owed a political office for his support of Garfield's campaign. No, Satya, he was a classic example of the corrupt system Garfield was trying to destroy. In his twisted mind, assassinating the president would somehow put his favored political faction in power and get him the job he felt he deserved. Garfield didn't die immediately. He was carried back to the White House, where he would begin an 80-day nightmare. The country and the world watched in horror. Dozens of doctors descended on the White House, all trying to find the bullet. But this was 1881. The understanding of germs and infection was still in its infancy. Doctors probed the wound with unsterilized fingers and dirty instruments, turning a survivable injury into a death sentence. They poked and prodded, creating new paths for infection to spread throughout his body. Even the famous inventor, Alexander Graham Bell, tried to help, hastily creating a metal detector to locate the bullet, but his device failed due to the metal springs in the president's mattress. For 80 agonizing days, Garfield fought for his life. His body wasted away, racked with fever and infection. The nation held its breath, praying for a miracle. Daily bulletins on his condition were posted across the country. He endured it all with incredible courage and grace, but the infection was too severe. On September 19, 1801, James A. Garfield died. His presidency lasted just 200 days. We can only speculate about what he might have accomplished. Would he have succeeded in reforming the government? Would his advocacy have advanced the cause of civil rights by decades? We'll never know. His assassination, however, did lead to one major change. It shocked the nation into passing the Pendleton Civil Service Reform Act, finally ending the corrupt spoils system that Garfield had fought against. In a tragic, ironic way, his death achieved one of his greatest goals. James A. Garfield's story is one of America's great what-ifs, a story of a brilliant, good man who rose from nothing, who represented the very best of the American dream, and who was stolen from the nation just as he was about to begin his great work. He is often a forgotten president, a footnote between eras, But his life and his tragic end are a powerful reminder of how a single moment can change the course of history. Thank you for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, please like this video, subscribe for more stories from history, and let me know in the comments what you think about the lost potential of President Garfield.